Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday, June 7th, 2023. This is tonight's edition of Sports Talk Live with your host, myself, Nick Burt. It's been a very interesting past 2 days in sports. There's been two major stories here on these coasts in America, and I feel like we should just get into the biggest story that has happened in the world of soccer these past 24 to 48 hours. And that is Messi. Lionel Messi is coming to MLS. He will be joining Inter Miami. He's agreed to a contract in principle. There is still things to be figured out according to Messi and Inter Miami. But this is going to be groundbreaking for football in America. But I also feel like it's going to move the needle, but probably won't do as much as people are acting like it will. So within this deal, Messi is obviously becoming the highest paid player in all of MLS, probably MLS history would be my guess. It would be crazy if it wasn't. He is also getting a percentage of the Apple TV deal that MLS has with Apple. He's getting specific deal from Adidas because Adidas is the official supplier of clothing for the MLS. And he's also getting, I don't know if it's specific ownership for Inter Miami, but he's getting ownership of a MLS club, either that be Inter Miami or a future club. I'm guessing it's going to be Inter Miami. But it's a groundbreaking day for soccer/football in the U.S. One of the greatest players of all time coming to the shores. I mean, he's playing his last days of his career. So it still gives off that retirement league energy, just like the David Beckhams, the Pelés, the Wayne Rooneys, not Zlatan because he went back to England, or he went back to Italy, I should say. But still, MLS has done a good job the past 10-ish years of trying to shed that, retirement league title. And I think they've done a good job. They've produced a lot of talent that has ended up on the U.S. national team, ended up on some other national teams also. But it's just, you keep getting these players. Now, it's good for the league because I think it will get some more people to care about the league in America, but I don't think it's going to be a ton of people, if we're honest. The people that care are already watching, and I think it's because the product in MLS just isn't up to standard with the other leagues that people watch, especially in Europe. So given that, I think it's going to end up turning out well for Messi. He's going to make a gigantic amount of money. Not as much as he would have made going to Saudi Arabia. The last reports were that he was offered a 3-year, $1.6 billion contract, yes, with a B. But he turned that down, and he will be headed to Fort Lauderdale, actually, because Inter Miami still don't have a stadium. They are playing out of a temporarily built stadium built on the former location of Lockhart Stadium, which is where the Miami Fusion played, the original Miami MLS team. So it's going to be interesting because I still don't believe that Messi is going to be playing at a 15 to 20,000 seat temporary stadium that's basically built on top of a parking lot in Fort Lauderdale. But I mean, it seems like it's going to happen. I don't know if maybe so when he can join the team is after July 5th. That is when the MLS transfer window opens. So that's when he would be eligible to join. Their first game is July 8th. He most likely won't play in that. They have another one the week after that. And then the MLS goes on their month break for the Leagues Cup, where it's MLS versus Liga MX, which is the Mexican league. And it's all sounding like he will make his Inter Miami debut during the Leagues Cup, so he won't be playing in those 2 games before that break. And I believe Inter Miami have 2 home games for that Leagues Cup before it gets into the knockout stages. My guess, either Inter Miami are going to make a gazillion dollars for selling tickets to a 20,000 seat stadium for people to see Messi, or I think the more realistic option is they come up with a deal with Dolphins owner Stephen Ross, and they have those games played at the Hard Rock Stadium, home of the Dolphins and Miami Hurricanes football team. And I believe they will play their games there, at least for the Leagues Cup. I do not know if they will play the rest of the MLS season there. I highly doubt it. But I can't see Messi playing in that small of a stadium as a home stadium. The other big factor is like some of those major road games that are going to be at big stadiums, like in Seattle. That's not on the schedule so far this year, but you never know. You got Charlotte, you got Atlanta, you got New England, and then again on the West Coast you have Portland and Vancouver. I believe there's one other team, but they have artificial turf. I don't see Messi playing in those games on artificial turf. I just don't see it happening. But obviously things can change. It very well could be. I just feel like it's going to be written in his contract that he does not have to play in those games. And 100% wouldn't be surprised not to see him playing in those games. Even though Atlanta and Charlotte are going to draw 2 of the biggest crowds because they play in an NFL stadium. Again, there are a lot of details I feel still need to be ironed out because MLS still has to figure out what they're doing with. They're trying to figure out a lot right now because it seems like there's going to be a crew of people that want to come with Messi to Miami. I've already seen Sergio Busquets wants to join Miami. Angel Di Maria, possibly a few other players. But with MLS, it's only 3 designated players that don't go against the salary cap. And the salary cap is very low in MLS given the other players there. So it's going to be interesting to see what MLS can do because MLS is going to be just they're breaking all their own rules to get this over the line, which 100% makes sense from their business perspective. And we'll see what happens with this. It's going to be something to really pay attention to come July and August when he is making his debut in America. To see what he can do with this Inter Miami team. They just sacked their manager. They are currently bottom of the Eastern Conference. They sit in 15th. And there really is nowhere to go but up. There are rumors that Tata Martino, the former Mexico manager and Argentine-born manager, will be the next manager at Inter Miami because of his connections with Messi. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Obviously, Inter Miami is going to be the hottest name in MLS come July. I believe the days of all of us hearing about LAFC being that gigantic team are now going to be faded. They'll still be there, but they don't have Messi, and I believe MLS has been working on this for years to get him to MLS. So we'll see how that plays out. It's definitely going to be interesting given all that they are going through to get him here. And it's good for the game, I believe, in the States. It's something that will help grow the game going into Copa America in 2024, going into the World Cup in 2026, both being played on these soils. It's something that is going to be very interesting to watch how the sport develops in this country. So moving on, a quick kick around the pitch since we were talking about soccer. There are a few matches going on tonight, including Inter Miami. They're playing in their quarterfinal match of the U.S. Open Cup against Birmingham Legion. That game is currently just out of halftime. It is tied 0-0. The other U.S. Open Cup game, quarterfinal game tonight, I should say, is Real Salt Lake and LA Galaxy. That one's in Salt Lake City. Both two interesting matches. Last night, Houston defeated Chicago 4-1 to move on to the semifinals, and Cincinnati beat the Pittsburgh Riverhounds to move on to the semifinals. So we will have a semifinal set for the U.S. Open Cup by the end of tonight. One of the things, so for those that don't know, the U.S. Open Cup is like the U.S. version of the FA Cup. So basically, from any tier of what the fake pyramid that there is in America, because there is no promotion and relegation. The tier-ish that is in America, anybody can play in it. You gotta qualify and then just play the games. Basically, it's the U.S. version of the FA Cup. My big annoyance with it is we get on a roll with it in March, April, May, June. June we hit the quarterfinals. And then we don't play the semis until the end of August. And then we don't play the finals until the end of September. That's just absolutely insane. I get that they're trying to push this Leagues Cup. But like if we take a look at a different competition that is finishing tonight, which I will discuss here in a minute, the Canadian Championship, which is the Canadian version of the FA Cup. Now, there's not as many teams, obviously, but they started in mid-April. Their final is tonight. So, once again, yes, it makes sense because I believe there's like 10 teams participating in this tournament. With the U.S. Open Cup, you have many more than that. But I don't see why there isn't a way to have the finals for the U.S. Open Cup be like July 4th weekend or something like that. And then just kind of work back from there. It probably doesn't fit into the schedule well. These schedules do become compact with the way, MLS, USL, NISA, how they all kind of squeeze in matches. So it's something, if all the federations got together, or leagues I should say, if they all got together and figured this out, I think it could work, but it just doesn't seem like that's there. And you also got to factor in U.S. Soccer does not seem to care about the U.S. Open Cup at all. There's very little marketing for it. Their matches are on like the Golasso network after they were with BR Sports, I believe, and they just kind of gave up like midway through because they just didn't care about promoting it. Nobody was watching it. So it should be so much bigger than it is. It's just, it has so much potential, but they're not using it because they just don't care, which I don't get at all. I think this could be just an amazing competition because everybody loves like the drama of the FA Cup, of the people that watch soccer. But I mean, especially here in America, and they barely know that it's happening here too. So there is, I think, much more that could be done, but it's just about if U.S. Soccer, who runs it, cares about promoting it. So that's my rant on the U.S. Open Cup for today. Like I mentioned, another match tonight. It's the Canadian Championship, which is the Canadian version of the Open Cup, / the Canadian version of the FA Cup. It is Vancouver Whitecaps against CF Montreal. I'm wearing the old Montreal shirt, the Impact de Montreal, before it became Club de Foot Montreal, and then before it became CF Montreal. Should be an interesting game tonight. This one's in Vancouver, given the 10:30 start time. Winner of this gets a spot in the now renamed CONCACAF Champions Cup, which has now become expanded, and it's a different setup now. I don't really know if I 100% agree with it, because now it's like more than half the teams that will be getting in it are going to be MLS or Liga MX teams, and this competition was already dominated by them. And by the later stages of it, you get the MLS teams that don't really care about it at all, because it's just another fixture that they have to play their players in. They did bump up the payout a little bit more, but I don't know if it's going to be enough for MLS teams to care. But the winner of this game does get a spot in the CONCACAF Champions Cup for next year, which takes place from February basically until June, because it just ended on Sunday. It was Club Leon winning from Mexico. So I think this will be an interesting match. Hopefully CF Montreal pull it out, obviously, because I'm wearing the kit. And it should just be, like I said, an entertaining game. Vancouver's going to have to use that home crowd to their advantage. It's also going to depend on how much of a home crowd they do have. Yes, this is a championship game, but it's also on a Wednesday night. So you got to factor that in. You're not going to really know much of how that crowd shows up, because it's just on a Wednesday night, obviously. So, like I said, that will be interesting. Both teams not having the greatest of MLS seasons. Like, I know CF Montreal is like in 10th or 11th right now in the West, I believe. Let me pull up the table right now. They're in 10th, so they are currently 2 points out of a playoff spot with one game in hand on 9th place Charlotte. In the West, Vancouver is actually in 6th, so they're both having okay seasons. Montreal did not get off to a good start at all. Over the weekend, they fell to Philadelphia 3-0. But it's been a hit or miss season for Montreal. So hopefully for tonight, they're hitting and not missing. And we'll just see how this plays out. They did play, I believe, earlier this year in Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken. Just checking that really quick. They did indeed. They played on April 1st in Vancouver, won 5-0. So this is going to be a very interesting game to see how it plays out, because I could see it being that 5-0 result again, but I also could see Montreal winning like 2 or 3-0. It could really go either way. So that's going to be a quick kick around the pitch for today. Nothing really else to talk about in the soccer world, really dominated by the Messi story today. Another news that broke yesterday, the PGA Tour Live, the DP World Tour, they've agreed to a merger, and it is causing huge shockwaves in golf, because it very much seems like Live is no more, and now what's going to happen here? It sounds like it is known that PIF, which is the public investment firm of Saudi Arabia, will be the controlling owners of this new entity that will be created. All three leagues, as we know it, don't seem to really... They exist, but they don't really anymore. It's going to be interesting to see how this reunification of players plays out, because it got ugly last year when players were leaving for huge paychecks to live. And now coming back, you got like the Roy McIlroys of the world who were offered 8-9 figure, or probably 8 figures to jump to live, and declined it because, it was the integrity of the game, as Jay Monahan, the PGA commissioner, said. And now there was no communication on the PGA side. There was no communication between really anybody until this story was broke. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. It's got all the drama in it. Obviously, the PGA players are absolutely livid by this. A lot of them had choices to jump to LIV, but decided against it due to the ownership of LIV being Saudi Arabia and, people not wanting to deal with that, basically, because working with Saudi Arabia brings its whole can of worms with it that aren't pleasant. And then you got the people from LIV that, were claiming that they were just taking blood money. It's all going to become very interesting when all these players start to get reintegrated into this new league, whatever it will be called. I don't know. This global series, as they are calling it, I believe. It's going to be interesting to see how this works, because I don't really know how this is going to work. I don't know if the players that turned down the LIV contracts that stayed in PGA are going to end up getting paid, by the PIF. I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm assuming everybody is getting pay raises now, but they might not. You never know. It's all murky situations because there are very little details about this out, which is probably more worrying for the PGA players, given that they have no idea what's happened and they just know that basically they're working for PIF now. So it's definitely a story that needs to be monitored. It's something that came out of absolutely nowhere yesterday, and a lot of people probably are very shocked by this. It seems like Greg Norman no longer involved in any of this, so the shark is done with Saudi Arabia, I guess. I don't know. But like I said, it's interesting that PIF is now the controlling owner and operator of this new entity. So it's really going to be interesting to see how that works, because I don't know if some of these players will want to work with them, because I don't know. Be interesting to monitor. So we'll do some NFL news and notes. Only real big story today. And I saw this and I kind of wanted to discuss it because I feel like it kind of came out of nowhere, even though I saw it come up like a few months ago that it was kind of in the planning stages, but wasn't really. But the Jaguars are completely rebuilding their stadium, more than likely. I don't think there's really set in stone dates yet, but this from the Jaguars website are the renderings of it. It looks like a basically even more modernized SoFi Stadium, kind of. It's got a roof. Obviously, these are renderings, concepts. So there's a very good chance it doesn't end up looking like this. And then here's the inside of it. You kind of can see that the lower bowl is still somewhat maintained from what is there now. I find the interesting thing is that in the upper deck, you can see there are tarps up, pushing or hiding empty seats, I guess. I don't know why they would put that in a rendering. I guess to show that there's an option. But if you're building a brand new stadium-ish, you would think that, you wouldn't want to put tarps in. There were other renderings that were for the Florida-Georgia game, and then potentially hosting a college football playoff. There's no tarps to be found there. I'm interested to see how this plays out because, I mean, the Jaguars already play a fourth of their games in London. And by a fourth, I mean 2. But still, the question to go here is, this looks like it's going to be a 2-year project, which it sounds like it will be, that will leave the Jaguars without a home for 2 years. That, I believe, opens up a whole nother can of worms of what you do with the Jaguars for those 2 years. There's nowhere in Jacksonville you can do it, obviously. The things I've seen mentioned are them building a temporary stadium at the University of North Florida. North Florida does not have a football team, so I don't know what that would entail, building a temporary stadium there, but we'll keep going. I saw them going to Orlando Camping World Stadium, which is an okay option, I guess. There is them potentially going to Gainesville, the Swamp, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium on the campus of the University of Florida. That very kind of seems like a possibility. I believe it's only like a hour-ish drive. I have seen Daytona International Speedway mentioned, which I 100% don't think would happen, but it would be very funny if that happens, so I'm hoping it happens. And then I've seen both the London stadiums, so Wembley and Tottenham Hotspur stadiums, mentioned as possible homes for the Jaguars in these 2 years. So I don't know what the Jaguars do here. The stadium looks very nice if it ends up turning out that way. Like I said, it kind of looks like a SoFi-ish stadium, which I feel like is going to be the look for stadiums now going into the future. I don't know what you do with the Jaguars for 2 years, because if you put them in London for 2 years, I feel like you can't move them back. It's going to be one of those situations, or it ends up being a situation like at the time New Orleans Hornets had when Hurricane Katrina hit in, that would be 05. They played the 05-06, the 06-07, and I believe the beginning of the 07-08 season. They played them in Oklahoma City. And by the end of the 07-08 season, they were obviously back in New Orleans. At the end of that season, that's when the Supersonics moved to Oklahoma City. So does a situation like that happen where it's the Jaguars are in London for 2 years and then I don't see any teams relocating, but then you have an expansion team come in and they are playing in London full time? I feel like this speeds up the logistics of the NFL figuring out how to make a team work in London full time, if this is what the Jaguars plan to do. I wonder if that is kind of what the NBA or the NFL is thinking right now, because from all the timelines you always see, it's always, that's more than 10 years away. We're looking at 2030 and beyond for that potential expansion. But, I mean, this could be the trial run that the NFL probably wants to see if this will work. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't know what the Jaguars do. I feel like it's going to be Gainesville if they do it. I don't see them building a temporary stadium at the University of North Florida. I don't see them playing at Daytona International Speedway. And maybe they increase their games in London from 2 to 3, but I don't see them playing there full time. That was the main NFL news today. NHL news and notes for the day. Again, not much. We had the Stanley Cup Final Game 2. That was Monday night. That was just it was a barnstorming by the Vegas Golden Knights. The Florida Panthers look absolutely lost. and they're going to have to figure something out come tomorrow night, or this series it's curtains, because it would be 3-0, obviously. So I don't know what the Florida Panthers do. Like I said, they fell apart game 2. They had like 5 guys on their bench by the end of the game, with the ejections from it, injuries, all of that. And I will say, the refs on Monday night were giving out 10-minute misconducts like it was free candy. That was the most 10s I've seen in a game in almost forever, it feels like. I feel like the refs kind of were giving just... They weren't 10 minutes majors, but they were just giving them. So the Panthers have to calm down, and they have to control themselves coming into game 3. They're going to be on home ice. Don't know how much that's going to play an advantage to them, but they're going to have to do something. And it's going to be interesting to see how game 3 plays out, because, like I said, obviously if they don't win it, it's curtains for the series. Like I said earlier, on Monday's episode, it just feels like that Panthers team had too much time off in between them sweeping the Hurricanes and going to the Cup Final game 1. And they lost all momentum they had. That's what it feels like. And it's sad, because you were hoping for a much more entertaining final, and it doesn't look like we're going to get that. So finally, we will end with the NBA, because game 3 is on right now. The Nuggets are leading 45-44 with 2:49 left in the second. This is a interesting game, because I feel like a lot of people were on the Heat to win this because it's in Miami, but Denver's been holding their own, I'd say. The leads kind of have been going back and forth this first half. No teams really had a outstanding advantage, but it's been the play of Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray that's been absolutely amazing this first half. Both of them have basically scored or assisted on all of the Nuggets points tonight. That's just an absolutely incredible stat. Nikola Jokic is currently 12 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists. That's a very good performance for a first half. So if the Nuggets win this game 3, I don't think they win game 4. If they win I kind of feel like, they'll be alternating wins. I've said that this is going to go to game 7. I think they'll keep flipping wins until we get to game 7, and then it's going to be whatever. So that's going to be interesting for that, because this is a much better finals than the Stanley Cup Finals, because it seems like the trophy's already being handed to Vegas. They've looked 100% the better team. And in the NBA Finals, each team has had a good game, and each team's had a bad game. And you kind of like that in a final. You always want them close. You don't want the blowouts like we saw on Monday night in Vegas. So I'm excited to watch the end of this game. The Nuggets currently aren't making all their free throws, which could be a problem come later in this game, obviously, given that it's such a small lead for them right now. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting second half. Gotta wonder if, somebody like a, Jimmy Butler, who currently has 14 points, if you see him just have an absolutely amazing second half and lead the Heat to the victory, or if you see somebody like Jamal Murray or Nikola Jokic just absolutely go off in the second half and take them to victory. Or maybe you got, one of those guys off the bench that like a Duncan Robinson that just goes off in the second half. It's going to be interesting to see how this second half plays out. I mean, we've got a minute 45 left in this half. So it's going to be interesting either way. So that's going to be it for tonight. We will be back on Friday. It's an episode I'm very much looking forward to. I will be previewing the CFL season. CFL, my probably third favorite league in the world right now. It's going to be a lot of football talk on Friday. Even though the season technically starts tomorrow, it gives us something to review with the first game, but then the other 3 games will be later, and it should be entertaining. So given that, I will end it tonight. Thank you for watching. It's going to be an outstanding show on Friday. I can guarantee you that. So make sure you tune in for that one.